All right, guys. Here we are.
Hi, I'm
Whenever
Ned
you're ready.
Miller, and I'm part of a group of three people that you're going to be chatting with over the course of the next few minutes about St. James School. My guess is if you're getting this, you probably know something about St. James. If you don't, you ought to certainly go to the website and get a chance to see some of the great things that they're doing. But we're going to talk about a part of St. James School that, quite honestly, a lot of people don't fully appreciate. And that's what happens after they graduate. When you think about it, the mission of St. James cannot end when kids graduate. And what we're going to talk a little bit about, again, over the next few minutes is what happens when kids actually matriculate in high schools and then eventually get to college. Some of you may know that what we're seeing really now for the first time are the graduates who are in college. We're also seeing the kids who are not going to college but are pursuing post-secondary education in the trades and in other areas. So I'm here with Kevin Todd, who's the Director of Graduate Support, and Mike Mayer, who's a longtime supporter of St. James, and like me, a parishioner of St. David's Church, but a huge fan of what's going on at St. James. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike for a couple of observations and then move ahead.
Thanks, Ned. So what I would say is, since the time that I've begun working with St. James, and it's for those that have sort of wondered and are interested, it's an incredibly rewarding experience. One of our parishioners, Robert White, had mentioned the rewards that he had in working in the classrooms and introduced me to Kevin Todd. And I've had the blessing and the pleasure to really get to know many of the students and get to see Kevin in action and spend time in the school in one of the many programs that Kevin has developed, working with students in mostly the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grades in doing some after-school tutoring. So that's been my involvement in it, and I'll give you some other inputs and thoughts after Kevin's presentation. Kevin?
Mike is actually familiar with some of the students that Kevin's going to talk about, some of the graduates of St. James. But I want to turn it over to Kevin. He can talk a little bit about the agenda and what we're going to try to accomplish here. So Kevin, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike and Ned. So like was said, my name is Kevin Todd. I serve as the Director of Graduate Support at St. James School. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our program, Graduate Support, and what that is. And then we're going to talk about what our next big development within our program consists of, which is post-secondary support. We're going to get to know a couple of the young people that I work with, and then Mike's going to finish up with a call to action for us. So what is graduate support? So one of the hallmarks of St. James School that makes us such a unique institution is that we make a lifelong commitment to our young people. If you're probably aware, we are a 4th to 8th grade school. We're a neighborhood school, so all the students we serve live in our neighborhood. All students at St. James School qualify for free or reduced lunch. But what we have in common with other schools in our Nativity and Miguel network is that we all have a graduate support program. And at St. James School, that means 3 full-time staff, me and 2 others. We have dozens of volunteers and mentors, such as Mike Mayer and Ned. On campus, if you ever get a chance to visit, I'd be happy to show you. We have a space that you can see on this slide called the Huskies Hangout. And the Huskies Hangout is a space dedicated solely to St. James School graduates. It is a space where tutoring happens, mentoring, counseling, college counseling, all types of things. Every day from 3 to 6:30, the space is dedicated to after-school study hall. So our high school age students come back and they use the space for homework, for computers, for food, for air conditioning in the summertime, or just to hang out with friends and catch up. One of my staff members, Mandisa John, she's in charge of high school placement. So she's working hand in glove with all of the 8th graders and their families, making sure that each St. James student finds the best fit high school for them. And later on in our presentation, we're going to talk a little bit more about who our students are. I want to start off with this photo. This photo dates back to 2011. What you're looking at here is our very first class of students at St. James School. You see a much younger, better haired version of myself in the back. And on the right, you see my colleague, Fabian Austin. Fabian and I, at this time, were working in the classroom together. And now Fabian and I work together in the graduate support team. These young boys you see were the boys from our first class, and this was an all boys trip we took to the Lincoln Financial Field and got a tour of the facilities with the Eagles staff. Some of these young men now are 18 and 19 years old. About half of them have already graduated high school, half are still working on their diplomas. But these are some of the actual kids we're trying to raise money for today. And I show you this picture just to illustrate that lots of programs try to do what we do in graduate support. There are lots of programs in Philadelphia that try to get first generation low income students to and through college. The advantage that I think our team has is that we know our students and families extremely, extremely well. So Fabian and I have worked with these young men for going on 10 years now. And there's not many access programs like ours, I think, that can say they have the same deep level of trust and commitment to the young people they work with. So what's the problem we're trying to solve today? So the reality is that 90% of low-income first-generation college students do not earn a bachelor's degree within 6 years. These are the young people we're talking about at St. James. And if you're like me and you think that we should judge ourselves as a society based on how we treat our most vulnerable people, this stat tells me that we're not doing a very good job. The odds are stacked against the young people who come to St. James School. And the reality is too many of them are being shut out of a ticket to the middle class. So that's what graduate support, that's what our goal is. Our goal is really to open doors for our young people to the future. Some of the people you see in these photos are some of our oldest graduates and some of our most recent graduates as well. So the solution that we're proposing is post-secondary support. And this is not something that we cooked up ourselves. This is something that has a proven track record of success in our sister schools throughout the country. What post-secondary support is it's a three-legged stool. It starts with our families. So for many of our families, college is new to them. All of our students we're currently working with are first generation students, meaning they're the first in their family to go to college. So without some type of family support, it's very, very difficult for students to succeed in college. So it's on me and my team to really walk parents and guardians through the process of post-secondary education. For many of our families and our parents, when they turned 18, they were on their own. They were making money and they were supporting themselves. So to have a different future and to imagine a different future for their children, it's not always easy. So it's on us to really show parents the pathway towards a better life for their children. Second is the students themselves. So at Graduate Support, we believe in a high touch scaffold level of support. What that means, high touch, simply means we are in close, constant communication with the young people we work with. We have a finger to the pulse of their lives. We really share in their struggles and their challenges. And we're hoping to develop a scaffold level of support, which means that if we're doing our jobs right, we're building them towards self-sufficiency. And the older they get, the more independent they can be. And we can scaffold away some of the support that we put in place at a younger age. And mentoring and coaching. So we have a big network of mentors and coaches such as Mike, and my team, we serve as mentors and coaches for the young people through their high school and college years. And lastly, the schools themselves. So we work diligently to build and maintain partnerships with committed mission-driven institutions. We're looking for colleges and universities who want to serve our students. We're not interested in partnering with schools that do not have the right supports in place to allow our students to succeed in college.
Just a question for me about the kinds of schools that you found to be supportive of the mission. Where do you find them? Who are they?
Good question, Ed. So I can share with you when we're done this call, there are a number of pillars that the National College Access Network has identified as qualities that colleges all share that lend itself best to supporting first generation students. So just to give you a couple of examples, one thing is a strong summer bridge program. So we're looking for colleges that will wrap their arms around their students before they even set foot on campus. Many colleges now are creating these bridge programs for students after they graduate high school, the summer before they arrive on campus, so that day one of classes, students for whom college is foreign feel much more at home and welcoming and comfortable on campus. Obviously, the most important thing, which is what we're talking about today, is financial support. So what we are certainly not interested in is burdening our students with life-crippling debt. That's probably first and foremost for me anyway. And thirdly, we're looking for a point person on campus that we can reach out to when something goes awry. Everyone experiences challenges in college. It's our goal that when our students experience challenges, they don't become roadblocks to success. We want to make sure that whatever challenges our students face, they're able to recover from and learn from. So those are just three things that we're looking for in schools. And some of the schools where we've seen success so far, LaSalle University, where we have one of our students you'll hear about later. Community College of Philadelphia is a very good option, especially when it comes to affordability. And obviously we're looking for more. So we have another student at Howard who's doing well, and we have 2 students at Cabrini University. So we're still trying to build these partnerships with colleges and post-secondary institutions. Does that answer your question, Ned?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks, Kevin.
So who are our students? Our kids, like I've said, are all low-income first generation. They come from they achieve a wide variety of outcomes. So what St. James School is not in the business of is cherry picking the most highest performing kids in the neighborhood and pushing them towards elite institutions. When we engage with a family from the day one, we want to meet families and students where they are and help them achieve success, whatever that means to them. So we have a wide variety of outcomes. We currently have a young lady at Howard University who's on a pre-med track, and we have many, many more who are looking at trade schools and other type of post-secondary career training programs. So we are not one-track minded when it comes to post-secondary education. Our kids grow up faster than most kids. That's just the reality. Our kids' lives are different than many of teenagers' lives in the suburbs. Our kids are faced with a wide array of challenges from a very early age. They're expected to earn money often at a higher rate and much sooner than their peers. They're expected to contribute to the household financially and otherwise. They're expected to often take care of younger ones. Our kids are workers. So one of the things that my team has to deal with is a strong ambition and drive to work and earn money from a very young age, which in many ways is a very, very admirable trait. But what we often have to temper is the desire to earn money and have a level of independence with longer term financial gains in the form of a college education. So what we don't want kids to do is sacrifice post-secondary education for a minimum wage job. We want them to keep that drive to work and earn money, but marry the desire also to earn a college degree and earn more money down the road. Our kids are caretakers, so a very large proportion of our young people are expected to take care of younger ones at home, which takes up significant amount of time and energy on their part. And lastly, our kids are dreamers. So one of the things that constantly keeps me motivated to do the work that I do is the ambition and the goals that our kids have for themselves. I'm constantly blown away by their imagination and their ability to think beyond the bounds of their current life. They have really big dreams for themselves. And that's what my team works to make a reality. So I want to share with you a couple anecdotes, a couple students who we're raising money for today. The first student I want to talk about is Jaleka. She graduated from St. James School in 2015. She went on to attend J.W. Hallahan Catholic Girls High School downtown. She graduated in 2019 and started this year at LaSalle University. She's declared her major as business. Um, she's a very highly motivated student. She's a worker. So the photo you see here on the screen is a picture of Jaleka with my wife, Sarah, who was her English teacher for 4 years. This was a day where Sarah and I just stopped at ShopRite for groceries, and we knew Jaleka worked at the sneaker store next door. So we stopped in, met her manager. We asked her if Jaleka was in tonight, and she was in the back on her break at 9:30 p.m. doing her homework for the next day. And Jaleka just kind of embodies what I mean when I say our kids are workers. They work their butts off. Jaleka comes from a single family household. She was raised by her father mostly, and she has a very challenging family dynamics. Her father is a blue collar guy who's worked very hard his whole life to get his children through really great schools. Jaleka experienced really difficult challenges her first semester in college, probably not unlike many of the young people you guys are familiar with. So where I think we really add value to our kids' lives is when things go awry. And after the first semester, Jaleka, me, the dean of the business school, we had a sit down kind of come to Jesus meeting with Jaleka, and we identified a lot of things she needed to change to do better in college. So far this year, she's done everything we've asked her to do this spring semester, and she's going to be invited back next year because she's put in a lot of hard work and made a lot of changes in her life. So our estimated gap for funding next year is $5,000, and that's for school year 2020, 2021. The next young man I want to introduce to you is John. He also graduated in Jaleka's class. John was the first student to ever enroll at St. James School. He lives right around the corner from school. John had a really difficult high school career. John carries with him some legacies of trauma in his life. He was in the foster care system from a young age, and he experienced a lot of abuse in the foster care system. His teenage years were a roller coaster, to be honest with you. He was in about 3 different high schools until he went to Keystone Job Corps, and he finished this year with his diploma and his carpentry certificate. He would like to pursue an advanced carpentry certificate at Orleans Technical College. And John's a guy I'm very, very proud of. I don't think many people knowing John would have expected him to graduate high school at all. So he's already outshone his expectations in my opinion. And this is Fabian with him, where he visited John up at Keystone earlier this year. Keystone Job Corps is about 2.5 hours away in northern central Pennsylvania. The last student I want to introduce you to is Tamia. Tamia is currently a high school senior at the U School. She graduated from St. James in 2016. Tamia also had a very traumatic childhood as a young person, and it was something that we were very intimately involved in. We sought many forms of counseling for Tamia throughout her years at St. James School. And in high school, it really seemed to pay off. Tamia has taken control of her mental health and really has taken ownership of her own well-being. And we've seen that in high school. She was able to achieve a very high GPA in high school. She moved in with her sister in 8th grade for safety reasons, and she's lived with her sister ever since. Because of her unique living situation, it is imperative that she lives on campus in college. Everyone who knows Tamia and her life agrees that living at home as a commuter would not be conducive to success. And that's the reason why you see a high estimated gap for her, because we are really trying our best to make sure she can live on campus in order to succeed. She's interested in counseling. I think part of the reason she wants a career in helping others is because she's seen how much other people were able to affect her in her life. So I'm really proud of her for choosing that path.
Mike, did you know in your time working with Kevin and some of the other students, any of the stories that Kevin just talked about, which by the way, Kevin got authorization to reveal some of these details. We don't want you to think he's
it's interesting, Ned. I've not bumped into John. I think maybe John came in one time, Kevin, when I was there tutoring, but I have had a couple of discussions with Tamia. She's I think the picture in the upper right-hand corner captures her very well. She's a ball of energy, and she's a solid person. I mean, she's just a good human being that's been able to overcome a lot of life's adversities to get as far as she has so far. And I think she's got a pretty bright future if we can help her fulfill what it is she's trying to do academically.
funny little anecdote about Tamia is she's a voracious reader. And during coronavirus, we've offered to buy graduates any books they want to read in their free time, just so they have something to keep themselves busy. Yesterday, I ordered Tamia's 8th book in 3.5 weeks that she's gone through. So I think that bodes well for her in college. So what we're trying to raise today are called last dollar scholarships. If you're familiar with college finances, what last dollar scholarships are monies that are applied to student costs after all other forms of aid have been applied. So the way colleges distribute financial aid is you fill out your FAFSA as a student, and the college reads your FAFSA and says, you have an estimated family contribution, otherwise known as an EFC. So your EFC is the number that the government says that they believe you can reasonably contribute to your education. Most of our students have a 0 EFC, meaning that the government has deemed that they are not in a position to contribute anything financially towards college. So a college has a decision. There are very few schools in the country who call themselves full need schools, meaning that they will provide the full need to any student they accept. Most colleges, I should say, will leave a student with what's called a gap. And a gap can be typically anywhere between, on the low end, $3,000 to the high end, $17,000 or more. So what we're trying to raise today are scholarships to fill that gap. So the money that we would provide are not taken into consideration for a student's financial aid, for example. And what we really want to do, and where I think we add a lot of value as graduate support staff, is that we know our students really well. So we know that Tamia is not going to succeed if she has to live at home during college, whereas James, on the other hand, might do well living at home. So we know that Tamia is going to need a larger gap filled than James might, since he can live at home. Any questions about last dollar scholarships? Does that make sense, guys?
Well, my only comment, Kevin, is twofold. One is you skipped quickly over the FAFSA process.
Yes.
And you're a pretty humble guy, but you personally have done all the FAFSAs for each one of these students, mostly because the parents are either unwilling, unable, or too intimidated by the process. I look at the majority of the people that I interface with, and they'd probably be stunned to know that you've done, I don't know, on the order of 15 to 20 of these, when most people shudder at the thought of doing one. So you're pretty intricately involved with what they're doing in that respect. And therefore, I've got great confidence that the numbers that you've got for us are scrubbed as tight and as cleanly as we possibly can. And we'll talk about that a little bit more after your presentation.
Yeah, so most of our high schools do not have the resources to provide, high touch college counseling. So, they might send an email out to the high school seniors and say, hey, everyone, finish your FAFSA by January. What me and my team do is we don't let kids off the hook. So, we will call James and Justin until they come in and finish their FAFSA. So I sit down with every senior and their parents together, create their accounts with them, and walk them through the whole FAFSA process. I should mention, like you said, Mike, the numbers that represent these gaps are based on, institutional aid, government aid, and third-party scholarships, but it's also after negotiations have taken place. So when Holy Family sends their first financial aid package to Tamia, we look at it together, and then Tamia and I will draft an email back to Holy Family saying, thank you for accepting Tamia. If Tamia is going to be a student at Holy Family, she's going to need more money. So most colleges will go back, reevaluate, and give out some more money after an appeal. So all of these gaps are after we've already done our first and sometimes second financial aid appeals. And these are the numbers I was just talking about. So the numbers you see here are the approximate gaps for each of these students for their, not necessarily their first choice, but their most reasonable, feasible for choice of school or program. So what you see here in red are at the bottom are 4-year college large gaps, and you see 3 students in that category. Then you see in the blue 3 students in the medium-sized gap range. Above that, you see 3 students in the 4-year small gap range, and above those, these 6 students are hoping to attend 2-year or technical programs. Any questions about the numbers you see here on the screen, guys?
So I understand these correctly, Kevin. These are basically go or no go numbers. So if we don't figure out a way to get Jaleka $8,000, she's not going back to LaSalle next year.
Correct. Yeah, and if you remember from the previous slide, you saw her gaps at 5,000. So she actually has a $3,000 balance for this school year, which since I've made this slide, we've already covered that. So
Okay.
that $8,000, it should now actually read 5,000. But you're right; these are all last dollar scholarships. So if these dollars are not raised, these students will not be able to attend these respective schools, essentially.
Or they could attend, but the living conditions, for example, you talked about having to live at home as opposed to living on campus,
Correct.
a significant factor in whether they're going to be successful or not. Because
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point, Ned, because some of these students, I mean, they don't have cars. It's not like we're in the western suburbs in the main line, you know, where you and I live, Ned. They don't have cars. So they're going to be on public transportation for, you know, an hour, 2 hours, or more each way to get to school. And then they got to get back home. And then they're back into all those same challenges that Kevin spoke with. So from a probability of success, living on campus for most of them is going to help, you know, take that 90% failure number and hopefully move it up some, you know, inch by inch, student by student.
You know, Tamia is a very illustrative example because, you know, I shared with you that she's currently living with her older sister. I mean, her older sister is young herself and has her own young children to take care of. So if Tamia were to live at home, she would be expected to contribute to the family finances, right? And what I've seen in my experience with this is what typically happens is a student will try to make that work and they'll work a part-time job, maybe working 10, 15 hours a week. Then they realize, well, I need more money. I'm going to work 20, 25 hours a week. That turns into 30, 35 hours a week, which quickly turns into working full time and not going to school at all. So for many, many kids, it's really difficult to balance living at home and going to school. Some can make it work. And I'll say Diamond, you see Diamond here, who's attending CCP. She's an example of really making it work. So she works at Starbucks downtown at 16th and Arch, and she goes to school full time at CCP while she lives with her family. She has the type of family where they can make it work.
You know, we gotta keep in context that this is in the world of COVID-19, and some of the kinds of jobs that these kids have and have been able to do well at in retail, in restaurants, Starbucks, could be in jeopardy under the regime that we're forced to live with, at least in the Philadelphia area. So got to keep that in context. So these numbers, while I trust Kevin's use of a sharp pencil, these might even be low in some cases.
Yep. So that's all I got for you guys. Are there any questions or things you guys want me to expand upon?
No, I think it's clear to me, you know, and having spent time with these students and listening to this presentation, Kevin, a couple of things. First of all, this is real need. This isn't, it's not padded. It's not hypothetical. This is real need that we've identified, and having been involved with this for the second year now, it continues. So what I would encourage anybody that sees this presentation to look at is a couple of things. First, the need is real. Second, this is merely an opportunity to level the playing field, to give these aspiring students a chance to achieve that which many kids don't even give a second thought to, and that is the prospect of a college education and a future with a college degree that can help propel them to an earning situation, you know, way above the poverty level that they've lived at and that their families lived at. I think that people who are watching this, if you're at all moved by this, and I certainly am, need to really be thinking about a spirit of generosity around this and how generous can you be? And there's a couple of ways you can do that, because from our planning in our discussions that Ned and Kevin and I have had, if one of these students needs $18,000, we don't need a check for $18,000 today, and we certainly would take $1,000 a month for the next 18 months as a way to get to that number. So if you're balking at the numbers because they look large, they are large, but there's absolutely a way to tear that apart into smaller doses and be able to say, look, let's figure out a way to get a credit card donation or some sort of automatic withdrawal from your bank account so that you can support one of these aspiring students. Part one. Part two, if you have not had an opportunity to go down to the school, you owe it to yourself to get down there and embrace the energy of these students and the lives that Kevin and Dave Kasovich and all of the faculty and staff of St. James have really been able to create this great oasis in a neighborhood where you know it makes you question why it even exists there, but it actually absolutely thrives, and you really owe it to yourself to go down there. And what I would say is, if you desire to take ownership for one of these students, I know with great confidence that Kevin and his staff will make certain that you get as much or as little interface with any of the students that you decide to personally adopt and fund. So we're asking that you really think deeply about what you've heard. If you have questions, you know how to get to Kevin and certainly Ned and myself. And please be generous when you're considering your support for the St. James School graduate programs.
I'll just add to Mike's comments. When you think about all the challenges that these kids face, and you think about what as a society we're trying to do now to educate kids without classes. Kevin alluded to how they're keeping things moving for not just their current students, but their graduates during this very difficult time. What you have to realize is that this is a way for us who believe that education should be a ticket to a better future, and it's not in a lot of cases. If you know anything about the Philadelphia public schools, the good news is that they received a very large sum of money recently to buy computers for their students. The bad news is that they are going to be behind the 8 ball anyway, because by the time anything gets put in place, they're going to be lagging those kids who are really benefiting from good schools and teachers who could pivot and create online materials for them. So we've got to do our part. We've got to do it intelligently. I'm committed, as Mike is, to trying to find any money that we can to help these kids and to help really the great mission of St. James, as it is going to be a benefit, not just to them, but to all of us. So with that, thank you very much for taking the time. If you want a copy of this presentation, we'll be happy to provide it. We hope that you have gotten a couple new ideas. And if you have some questions, ask. If you want to share this with any of your friends, feel free to do that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike and Ned. And feel free to reach out to me. This is my personal cell phone and my email address. And Mike and Ned, thank you for your support in this.